First off, we're going to talk a little bit about what NXOpen is, give you an introduction to that, talk about the scope. We're going to look at some examples and the benefits and the value. And then we're going to go into a journaling demo, an introduction to journaling for new users to NXOpen, and show you some of the resources on the web where you can go for help and learn more information. And then we're going to have a few moments for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type those into the text box, and I'll get to those at the end. So what is NXOpen? NXOpen, it is a collection of APIs that allows users to create custom applications for NX. On a broad scale, so that includes, so NXOpen allows access to the NXOpen object model or the NX object model within the session. You can create and edit geometry in the NX environment. You can customize the NX interface to best meet your company's specific needs, design, workflow, interact with additional related software and products such as Teamcenter. You can leverage analysis data from CMMs or a different system. You can also interface with third-party applications to maximize and get the most out of NX, and create integrated custom menus to customize the environment to your needs. So what is the scope of NXOpen? NXOpen can be used anywhere in the PLM, the product lifecycle, from quoting through CAD, CAM, and then up through the post-processing. And also, NXOpen is very scalable. So that means an individual user creating their own routines for themselves. It is very usable for them and is also usable on a large scale. So larger companies can take advantage of NXOpen, creating custom routines for hundreds of different users. Some of the specific automation tasks that can be completed in NX using NXOpen. You can automate coordinate systems, rotations, creating them. Anything that you do manually right now in your designs can be automated if it is something that is repeated over and over again. That is an opportunity for automation with NXOpen. You can optimize data sets within the NX an environment using NXOpen. You can leverage template files and start parts. So if you're already currently using template files for your designs or your CAM, and there are steps that you repeat frequently, that is an opportunity to come in and get more out of your templates using NXOpen. Additionally, we can create and edit geometry, create parts, assemblies. You can take advantage of materials and property specifications. You can apply boundary conditions and limitations to data sets using NXOpen, whether that's from a vendor, design specifications and limitations, or if you're identifying features to take advantage of feature-based machining in NX CAM. And as well, you can update expressions, and that allows you to get more out of your start parts and your template files. So let's jump right into our first demo. We're going to go look at, so I'm working in NX12 today, and this is my part. Now, if I were going to say, an example would be if I wanted to maybe put toolpaths in CAM environment, this could be used for design as well. If I want to identify these different face types and I want to use colors to do that, I've created an NXOpen routine that will do that for me. So normally what I would have to do in order to color faces based on specific criteria that I've previously determined, I have to use and it's automatically been done. Our planar faces are purple, our cylindrical faces are yellow, and so on. So normally what you'd have to do manually is you'd go over to View, Edit Object Display, select your faces, apply colors. And if this is something that you do frequently, this is going to become very repetitive over time, and it is non-value added, meaning that time spent selecting those items doesn't bring value to you or your customers. With NXOpen, this is something that you can automate. And so an example for this is in taking advantage of and taking your CAM processes further by taking advantage of feature-based machining. You can apply tool paths using the different colored faces. So what we saw in that example was we selected geometry, we edited geometry, selected objects, we used boundary criteria, which was the face type in this case, and of course boundary criteria can be anything from length, it can be determined by distance, it can be whatever it is that you're working with. We also saw we reused predefined data. So if you have common data that's used over and over, NXOpen can take advantage of that and automate your processes. All right, so let's look at some other customization examples through NXOpen. With NXOpen, you can customize the NX environment to your specific industry and process needs or your specific customer needs. You can create toolbars and buttons, menus, drop-downs, galleries. You can create specific workflows specific to your industry and product-specific functionality. You can also use this to enforce standards. So if you're trying to create a commonality amongst your data, NXOpen is a way to aid with accomplishing that. You can also create custom buttons for your custom NXOpen routines. Let's look at another example, our second demo. And with this, we're going to jump over to a different part. So say, as you're going through and working, and you're creating your design, you're updating it, you've created all this extra geometry right here, all these planes, and this makes your part very busy. Well, what a lot of customers do, a lot of users, they like to put all of their planes on onto one layer. And again, that takes some time because you have to select the geometry. But NXOpen, you can automate a routine to do that for you. And this is just an example. This can be done with, so first of all, I'm going to look at the view and we're going to jump to the layer settings so you can see that everything is currently on layer 1. So now I'm going to run the NXOpen routine. And you're going to see when we look at the layers again, now you can still see everything because all the layers are still visible. But if we look at the layer settings, here we can see that now our solid body is on layer 3 and all of our planes, our datums are on layer 10. So now you can do this with, multiple different types. This is a very simple model, so I only had 2 geometry types. But again, if you're working with a lot of different stuff and you're creating a lot of geometry, something like that is very helpful to clean up your part files and also creates more readable part files down the road if something like this is more common amongst all your files. And so what we saw in that example was we saw reusability of common data, and common data being here the different layers for each different geometry types. We saw a use of a journal, the reusability of a journal. So this could be reused by one person, it could be reused by 100 people. And usability for the user itself. The user just had to, click. In this case, this could actually be attached to a single button if you wanted to take the customization even further. And that can be placed up on your toolbar, so the user would just have one button to click. So the reusability and ease of use by the user. This also creates consistent data, it's very efficient, and leads to part readability down the road. So the other benefit to utilizing NXOpen is the ability to integrate with third-party applications and platforms. And a big one here that a lot of customers and users take advantage of is interacting and integrating with Excel, because a lot of our data gets stored in Excel files. So the ability to read that data, import it, and export it to Excel is very nice, specifically if you have a custom form for your NX, or for a custom form for your design. If Excel has design data in a specific format, in a repeated format, NXOpen can be leveraged by reading that design data and bringing it into maybe a start part. So let's go take a look at an example. And this example is actually reading data from a SQL database, not Excel, but it's another example of integrating with NX. And so in this example, that's fine, we'll leave the colors the way they are. But for this example, we're now in the CAM environment over here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to delete that. So the user, this is something we did for a customer. They have their custom, they keep their tool data in a SQL database. And now whenever the user wants to go bring in that tool data, they need to navigate to the SQL database, look up the data, and then manually enter it into NX. But when done frequently, this is a repeatable process. The format is very similar over and over. This is an opportunity for automation. The customer wanted us to create a routine that allowed them to automatically import that data from the SQL database and bring it into Excel or bring it into NX, and we were able to help them with that. And so I'm going to show you right now an example of what that looks like. So right now, you can see there's no right angle head over here, just carrier and pockets empty. And we're going to run this routine, and it's going to bring in the data. And I'm going to call my tool just my tool. Go ahead and click OK. And there it is right here with the values brought in from the database automatically. We were able to help the customer with this, and they were very happy. So other examples of systems that can be integrated with NX through NXOpen are additional desktop applications, your business systems, PLMs, servers, other data sharing. So what we saw in that example was, again, this is custom functionality with a custom dialog box, a custom routine. We saw data automatically imported into the NX object, seamless integration with the SQL database, and time saving for the company and the user. So an example of some of the applications or the uses of being able to integrate with Excel or other databases is customized shop documentation, design data, interacting, pulling it in or exporting it to another database like Excel. You can also work with other tool libraries. Pulling in data and exporting data can happen more automatically and more seamless using NXOpen. So a couple of the other benefits, so I've already talked about some. Reusability, of course, of your files. You can get more out of the automation or the customizations that you already have in place. NXOpen helps lead to less repetition, increased efficiency, increased accuracy. There will be fewer mistakes when more is automated. Eliminate mistakes, quicker training for new hires. When a lot more things are automated, there's less to learn for a new hire, less to train. You have increased greater flexibility, increased innovation, less time is spent on non-value added tasks, more energy and time can be spent on value added tasks like innovation, faster design time, increased productivity, increased value added activity, lower lead times, and most importantly, time savings or labor savings. So let's get into some of the specifics of NXOpen. We've seen examples now and benefits. So as a developer of an NXOpen, or if you're interested in developing NXOpen routines, some of the available toolkits are journals. So what you saw today are journaling examples. And journals are best for shorter simple tasks. They are a single file. They are not compiled. The other thing that journals are really great for is if you're working on a much larger project, you can journal specific smaller tasks that are going to be part of that larger project so that you can generate more of your code through journals. You can also create larger applications. They tend to be longer and more complicated processes. These are compiled into what's called a DLL, and that's I believe, a downloadable library. And then you also have the block styler, and that's a toolkit that allows you to create dialogues that are have the same look and feel of NX already. These are also compiled. So some of the technical limitations of journaling or advantages are, so journal recording is available in C#, VB, Java, C++, and Python. Playback is currently only available in C#, VB, and Python. So if you record it in Java, you do not have the ability to play it back. And then move on. So right now we're going to go through a short introduction to journaling. So I'm going to talk through this for a second, and then I'm going to go do the demonstration. So when you're starting out with your journal, first step is always to select the language that you would like to record your journal in. And this can be done a couple of ways. You can go through the preferences. You can also go through the file customer defaults. Then you're going to record it, and this is available through the developer tab. And then when you're ready to play it back, you can play it back also through the developer tab. So if we go back to NX, and I'm going to switch over to this part. I think I'm gonna, oops, not what I wanted. Okay. So here, what we're gonna do, and I wanna do this in here, because I'm gonna show you actually what we're gonna do really quickly. So the journal we're gonna create, it automatically sets the translucency of an object to 50%. And this is something that I like to have in the CAM environment, because when I'm working in CAM, I like to be able to turn my stock translucent off and on very quickly. So this is a usable tool for me. So first step, if you haven't already done it, is so you're going to go to your File, Preferences, User Interface, and this, under Tools, Journal, is where you select the language that you'd like to record. Now this will only, changing it here will only change it in your current NX session. By default, NX sets the journal language to VB. If you'd like to change it into your customer preferences, you can go Utilities, Customer Defaults, Gateway, and then you're going to scroll down until you get to User Interface right here, Journal, and then if you change it here, this way, if you like C# or if you like a different language, this will set it permanently until you change it here again to something else. So I have mine set to C# because that's what I like to program in. It's very useful. .NET is very useful for interacting with Excel and other applications. So I prefer C#, and if you're like most users, I think your system is going to be, and that's another thing, the language that you're going to use depends on, you know, what application you're creating and also the platform you're on. So if you're on Windows and you're just creating, say, something to pull information from Excel, or you're just creating something in only the NX environment, you're not interacting with anything outside of NX, I would recommend C#. There's a lot of documentation available in C#. .NET is it's a very user-friendly language. All right, so we selected our language. Yeah. So now, if you don't have the developer tab turned on, and oftentimes it's hidden, and you don't see it up here, right-click on this bar up here, come down to developer and turn it on, and you should see all these buttons. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit record, and I'm going to call it my journal. And right here, it's just telling you it's going to save it in the C# format or whatever language that you've selected. Click OK. So now it's recording, and now that we're actively recording a journal, if you can see NX, make sure, yeah, okay, you guys can see what I can see. Right here, there's these small green boxes, and that means that the function that this button does is recordable. So this can be recorded in a journal. Something like this does not have that same square, So this is not a journalable function. So if you're looking for what you can journal and what you can't, this is a pretty good indication. And then sometimes just trying it out and seeing what NX produces. Okay, so we're recording, and what I wanted to do was I'm going to change the translucency to 50%. So this is what I'm going to select. Select the object, hit OK, and jump this over to 50. There, not catching up. Click OK. And I'm going to stop recording right there. And then I'm going to undo what I just did and then say I want to play this. Click on my journal that I just created and hit run. And there, we didn't have to go through selecting the object, going through, we didn't have to go through those same steps. NX just did it. And so this, if you were going to include something like this into a much larger application, journaling it gets you really far. And then when you're ready to go ahead and edit your journal, so let's talk about what we just saw. So we selected our language, we turned on the developer tab, we recorded our journal, and then we played back our journal. And one note, if you record, so say you change and you select your language by going to preferences, and you record your journal, and then you open up NX at a later date, and you want to play that same journal, but when you go to, play, so say you go play, browse, and say you're not seeing the journal that you created and it's not where you put it, you may need to change your language selection again, because if you don't change it under customer preferences or customer defaults, NX will reset to the default, which is VB. So unless you recorded it in VB, you may not be able to see it or find it until you change the language again. So that's just something to know. All right, we created our journal, and we played it. So say you've recorded your journal, and now you're ready to edit your journal. Well, there's a couple different options. If you're recording a journal and you're just going to edit it, if you're going to record your journal, you've recorded your journal already and you'd like to edit in the NX environment, you can edit it through, so we can go back to here and click edit, and it's going to remember the last thing that I just recorded, which is the 50% visibility or 50% translucency. So this is the NX journal editor. It's a very simple text editor. You don't have a lot of tools up here, but if you're beginning, this is a great place to start. And if you want to reuse this and clean this up, I know from experience, having done this before, that all of these, you see these mark ID variables, all of these are unnecessary. So the first thing I often do if I'm going to be reusing code is I just get rid of these, like all of them, and then you can see what you're left with. And then the second thing, if you're reusing your code, is journaling creates this find object function right here. And this is only usable actually in journals. So if you're playing back a journal, you can reuse it, but if you try to play it back in a different part file, it's actually going to fail right here. So when you're editing journals, this is what you need to look for. And going through the NX documentation, let's get out of here. If you go through the menu, come down to help, and click on NX help, you can navigate to the Siemens documentation. You go to Program Tools, Open Programming Tools Help. So here is where you're going to start looking for the documentation and the information on how to actually edit your code. Along with this here, there's quite a few, there's the Siemens automation forum that's going to be very helpful if you're editing your own journaling code or your own NXOpen code. So that is a source for you. Oh, where'd it go? Yeah, it's right here. So there's a help documentation through NX that I just showed you. There's also reference materials Java docs, .NET docs available through Siemens. Siemens also has the customization forum that has a lot of great information. I use that a lot. So say you've used the journal editor, but you'd like a little bit more functionality because it is very simple. You also have Notepad++ that is a better, or not better, but it has more functionality for a lot of different languages, and it has more functionality as for programming. It has more customization, and it aids the programmer with ease of programming. So Notepad++ is good. You cannot compile with Notepad++, but it is a free editor. Visual Studio is another option. So if you're going to make larger projects and you're creating applications, or you're creating dialogues using the block styler, this is probably the tool you're going to want to use. There are free versions available. NX currently supports so if you're working in NX12, and Siemens currently supports the Visual Studio 2015 Express version. So that is available to you. If you're on a previous version of NX, I believe Visual Studio Express or Community 2012 is supported for NX10. And of course, the version of NX, or the version of Visual Studio that you're going to use to edit any applications is going to depend on which version of NX you're in. And I think there was one more thing that I wanted to say about this. Oh, yes. So NX, while NX is backwards compatible, NXOpen is not guaranteed to be backwards compatible. However, it is very rare that a version or a NX routine created for a previous version of NX doesn't work in a later one. And the reason that is because functions sometimes become deprecated. And Siemens provides documentation to tell you what has become deprecated, so you can, if you've created something from a previous version like NX11, you can check that documentation to see what may be deprecated and any issues you may have. But going from NX11 to NX12, users very rarely have problems with their NXOpen routines. But that is something that you will need to keep in mind.
Awesome. Looks like we have a question from Joseph Williams.
So the question is it fair to say that creating journals is equivalent to creating custom macros or map keys? And the answer to that is no. So with a journal, so I'll talk about a macro first. A macro, when you use a macro, the conditions need to be the same every single time if you'd like to reuse it. A journal is different in that it is edited or editable, and the conditions do not need to be the same every single time. So they appear similar on the surface. You can also attach a button to macros as the same as you can for a journal. But with a journal, you do get more functionality and more robustness, and there are more opportunities there. But they are very similar, but while the journal is more flexible. So that's the big difference there. Great question. Thank you.
Looks like Daniel Spurlock has a question as well.
So the question is, can NXOpen be used to populate a drawing title block from a spreadsheet? I have seen programmers use NXOpen to automate the population of drawing title blocks. Whether that information comes from a dialogue or from a spreadsheet, I don't think it's going to matter how it gets in there. But yes, NXOpen can be used to populate drawing title blocks. Great question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Most of you are clients of Applied CAX. If anybody needs help developing any kind of NXOpen or even has further questions, feel free to reach out to Elizabeth or I, and we'll try and help assist you navigate the process. Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for attending. Elizabeth, thank you for your hard work in putting this together. Have a great day.
Thank you to the attendees.